and welcome to The Gold Mind. I am your host, Casey Bell, and today's guest we have for you today is Bennett. Let's get started. So I checked out, what I do is when you fill out the form to be interviewed, I check your email, and my hope is that every author has their own website. So I went to your website, and I'm first thinking, this website does not sound like it's him, Archie Boy.
All right.
And so I go there, and I didn't really read it. I was just browsing it, and I'm confused now because I'm thinking, oh, maybe this is like a Yahoo or Gmail, So finally, I see the thing where it says authors, what's it called? Authors website, and I'm like, okay, this is him. I'm still thinking, oh, wow, talk about multiple streams of income. So first question before we get into everything you do, were you raised in an entrepreneurship home, or was this something that came about later?
Yes, my family was very entrepreneurial. My dad was a full-time inventor. He worked from our basement. He had a full shop in his basement, like a machine shop. And he was an inventor. He had over 1,000 patents in his lifetime under his name. And then at the end of his career, he worked for Cheeseboro Ponds. And that's a company that makes, they make like everything. It's one of those big conglomerates, but you like all different products that you buy in the store, and shampoos and foods and so forth. So that's what he did. And that was my exposure to what working was about. It wasn't 9 to 5. My dad pretty much did work 9 to 5, but he worked 9 to 5 by choice. He would get up early. He would have some water to drink for breakfast or whatever, and then he'd go down in the basement and he'd work pretty much until 5 o'clock. But just because he chose those hours, and then he would come up and he would spend the rest of the night drinking. So that's why in my book I refer to my dad as a functional alcoholic. He was definitely an alcoholic, no question there. But he was able to, like, he wouldn't drink until after 5 o'clock. That was kind of his rule every day, except for the weekends when he went on the boat, and all bets are off. My mom was a salesperson, and she sold a bunch of different products for different companies. And my sister was in real estate, so she was essentially working for herself as well. And my brother had my older brother had a t-shirt factory, a printing factory in our basement too. We had a big basement. So he ran a screen printing business out of our basement. So everybody in my family was an entrepreneur of some sort. So that was just kind of the logical next step for me. I never even thought about like getting a job or going to work for a company. It just never even crossed my mind.
That's amazing. You remind me of Thomas Edison, because most people don't know that his dad was an inventor of children's toys and puzzles and games and things of that sort. And so many people, specifically people of color, say that we need more representation so our children can blah, blah, blah. And one of the things I know that you don't need the village to be the representation for your children. You should be your own children's representation. And so Thomas Edison, seeing his dad be an inventor, made him realize he doesn't have to be an inventor of toys. He can still be an inventor. And as we know, Thomas Edison ended up being an inventor, over 1,000 patents in America, Australia, and I believe England as well. So you are the same, because your dad was an inventor. You are an inventor of businesses. It's not the same inventions. It's still, your dad was your representation that you can be an inventor of multiple things. And like I said, if anyone sees your website, it's just like business after business after business. It's very exciting to me anyways. So most people say no, so I can't really ask the next question, because usually I ask the next question is, well, how do you get inspired to be an entrepreneur? The thing is, your parents were your inspiration. What I will say is, even though most of your businesses are around books, was your own experience the reason why you made a decision to create so many businesses?
Well, I had one business at the very beginning, and that was my web hosting company that I started in 1995. If you remember, if your listeners remember back to 1995, this was just when people were starting to find out about the internet. Like the internet was not a household word back in 1995. In fact, my job was well, creating websites, like a web hosting company, and my job was to sell companies on why they needed a website. Now you think that's crazy today. Like, you don't have to do it. Everybody knows they need a website. But back then they didn't. I had to sell people on the internet, tell the companies what the internet was and how they could benefit from it. So I started that company in 1995, and I just I rode that wave, that internet wave. And fortunately, I got out like right before it crashed in early 2001, before like everything tanked. I was able to get a very good valuation for the company. And from that point on, that's when I decided to start doing a lot of different things. I had tons of ideas that I built up, but I couldn't really do a lot of those. I couldn't take advantage of those ideas while I was running Ad Graphics, was the name of the company, the web hosting company, because it sucked up complete all of my time. So what I did is I started with these ideas and these companies, and I started launching them. And I realized that I was missing something, because they weren't doing well at all. They were good ideas, but without like a solid execution and the effort behind them, they just couldn't take off. So I would just keep on trying, actually, but I was way too broad in my execution. Looking back at it now, what I should have done is I should have hired about like 10 individuals, or even just one individual for each company, and saying, okay, this is 100% your effort. You work on this and nothing else. And I think I would have done much better, but I didn't. I tried to do everything myself. And eventually something did catch on, and that was well, before that I bought a hosting company that was in bankruptcy. It was a huge data center in the Boston area, so I bought into that, and then I got it running again, so it was profitable, and then I sold it. But after that, the other big one was eBookit, and that's the one that did catch on, and that was the self-publishing company. And I've really been doing that ever since, but there were so many, it didn't really take a lot of my time. eBookit didn't take a lot of time at all, especially when I first started. So I would start all these other small companies, and some of them would catch on and some of them wouldn't. And I'm okay with that. You don't need everything to catch on. You just need some things to catch on. So I think what you're seeing now at Archie Boy Holdings, my website, archieboy.com, is pretty much all of the things that did catch on. There's a couple there that I probably will get rid of, but for the most part, these are the businesses that did catch on. And I have a lot of good people helping me out these days. So everything is getting the attention that they need.
Okay, so a question I'm going to ask for myself. Now that you have all these businesses, and I'm sure you have staff, how do you get to the point to where you can give them your baby, so to speak, and take care of it and trust them with it without leaning over their shoulder, nitpicking, and just being okay knowing that they're going to do what's right with it, and it may not be exactly the way I want it, it still will be the way it needs to be? How do you get to that point of entrusting someone else with your vision, your dream?
Well, really, it's about finding the right people. You need to find the right people. And even then, well, I would say even then you can't be 100% sure. You can't be 100% sure of anything, but you can't be 100% confident that the best person has the same vision as you, or will take it in the same direction, or make all the same decisions. But if you do think that they are the best person for the job, then you say, okay, I'm willing to let go, let's say like 10%. I'm willing to see to it that if I give this person and my business and I turn it over to them, it's going to be about 90% of what I want. And that's okay. You have to have that little variation there. And sometimes you have like the perfect person, or you think the perfect person, but it just doesn't work for one reason or another. They're not the perfect person. They may came across as a perfect person, but after enough time and experience, you see that they're really not doing a good enough job. And sometimes that's really hard, especially when you become really good friends with people that you're working with, to say, I'm sorry, but I got to take this back. This just isn't working out. But that's part of running the companies.
All right. What advice would you give someone? Now, I know you grew up in entrepreneurship, so it's easy for you. Well, easier for you. What advice would you give someone who didn't grow up that way and they want to be an entrepreneur, they're just fearful?
Right.
What steps would you give them?
Well, I would say it was only, I'm not sure if easy is the right word. It was a logical progression for me because of the fact that it was rampant throughout my family. But I would say for people who aren't exposed to the entrepreneurial lifestyle or what it takes to start your own business, I would say that just get some books and read some books, get inspiration from people who are exposed to that lifestyle and can expose you to that lifestyle. I really do believe that a good book from an entrepreneur is just as good as like a parent or a sibling that is an entrepreneur, because you'll get more advice from the book and probably better advice from a book, from somebody who knows how to communicate their message effectively. The second piece of advice I would give, and probably one of the most important, is you have to be in a good position to really risk it all and start a business. I was in that fortunate position when I just graduated from college. I had like no expenses. I sold my failing business to one of my partners at the time, and I sold it for $1, the business for $1. Basically, all the debt that I had in the business was just transferred over to her, and she was okay with that because she had that opportunity. So I was completely free. I had no debt. I basically had no assets either. I was just like nothing. But I had a whole bunch of ideas. So all I needed was, a few $1,000s from credit card debt. And that was enough to get started with what I wanted to do. And being in that no risk situation made it so easy. So how do you get in that situation for somebody who may be married and has kids that they're supporting? It's not an easy thing to do because it is a major risk. I did not have that major risk. There wasn't anything I was risking really. Perhaps the opportunity cost of not getting a real job was my only risk. And maybe, a couple $1,000s in credit card debt. Again, nothing major. My advice to anybody, I guess, would be to try to get yourself into a position where you could minimize that risk as much as possible. Whether it means, if you're not comfortable with all the debt that you have, get rid of some of that debt, downsize, get rid of your cars, use Uber. I don't know, whatever you're comfortable with. Get to the point where you have enough cash and you're willing to invest that cash into, or even credit or assets or a loan from somebody, and you're comfortably willing to take that money and just give it your best shot.
Thank you. All right. So my last question for you, and because you are an author and an entrepreneur, you can give me 2 answers or 1. It's completely up to you. So if you had the opportunity to have a conversation with either an entrepreneur or an author, whether they be dead or alive, whether they be well-known or unknown, who would these people or person be and why?
I would probably want to talk to Steve Jobs. He is gone, unfortunately, but I think Steve Jobs has always been an inspiration to me, and his story has been an inspiration because it's so twisted, and somewhat dark. There's a lot of negativity around him and the way that he governed, but yet he made it work. He wasn't the leader that everybody wanted, but perhaps he was the leader that his company needed. I would love to talk to him and just hear about some of his more personal failures and the time that he got kicked out of the company, and how he left, and what his thoughts were and his feelings. Like, was he completely dejected? Did he feel that he was defeated, or did he not even care, knowing that he was going to do something better? I just really find his story interesting, because everybody could tell a fairy tale story about the perfect leader and the perfect company that follows them. And that's pretty much, sure, if you're a perfect leader and you got a bunch of people who love to follow you, and everything will work out fine. But the fact is that rarely happens. And I think Steve Jobs and Apple is a really good case study of that not going smoothly. But yet, despite all those problems and the problems with its leadership style and everything, Apple is still, I don't know, it's the biggest, but one of the biggest companies in the world.
That is all the time we have for you today on The Gold Mine. I'd like to thank our guest, Bo Bennett, and of course you, the audience. As always, thank you so much for watching. Have a great day.